All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the drive-through. This is a very strange 5 minute lesson. I can remember not understanding this well when I was in school. We do not use these types of proofs a lot, but they have to be at least logically important. And I do have interest in understanding them better. So here we go. These are indirect proofs. Buckle up and be ready to think. Okay. A proof that uses indirect reasoning is called an indirect proof. What is indirect reasoning? It's a way of proving something true by assuming that the opposite is true. So consider this statement. Oh, let's just keep going. We're going to get back to that statement, okay? So here's indirect proof number one, a proof by contradiction. There's three steps, okay? So if you're given a statement, if P, then Q, assume that P and not Q are true. So turn it into if P, then not Q. And then show that the assumption of not Q leads to a contradiction. And what we learned before is the only way for P implies Q to be true, if P is true, is that if Q is also true. So by proving that not Q leads to a contradiction, you've indirectly concluded that Q must be true. So here's an example. If Sienna walks more than 8 miles over a 2 day period, then she must have walked at least 4 miles on the first or the second day. So you can already see that these are kind of strange if then statements. Okay, so one, we're going to assume that Sienna walks 8 miles is true. And then we're going to assume that she did not walk at least 4 miles on the first or second day. So we assumed that Q was not true. We negated Q. Okay, we negated Q. So now we can prove that a number less than 4 plus a number less than 4 can never be greater than 8. So now we've proven that not Q creates a contradiction. Since P implies not Q is false, then P implies Q must be true, assuming that Sienna walked more than 8 miles. So we've just proven that Sienna has walked at least 4 miles on the first or second day indirectly. And here's my full disclosure. Okay, now here is the second method of indirect proof. This is by the contrapositive. I must say I'm kind of interested in one and like understanding this. So remember that if a statement is true, its contrapositive is true. So let's look at that. If an animal is a mammal, then it is warm-blooded. That's true. Now let's look at it at the contrapositive. If an animal is not warm-blooded, then the animal is not a mammal. That's also true. So notice that the validity of the statement and the contrapositive always has the same value. If the statement's true, the contrapositive's true. If the statement is false, then the contrapositive is false. So here's our steps. If we're given a statement P implies Q, assume that not Q is true. Show that the assumption leads to not P being true. And since not Q implies not P is true, then we know P implies Q is true. Okay? We're going to do a classroom warm up that kind of takes us through maybe an example of that, but that's enough for you to get started. Once you get done with this practice, you're ready for your second quiz, and then you'll be ready to start studying for your test. Studying in math means practice. So before you start studying, take a look at your test. I'll give you 1 minute to look at it. And then that is the start of your studying/practice routine. All right, good job. Have a good day. We'll see you soon. Boom.